Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. And before I get going on today's topic, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as always, if you enjoy my videos, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, or share with someone that you think would find this content valuable. So today I am talking about introversion, extroversion as it relates to the voice, and what I think is actually a more useful way of approaching this. So I've been having this conversation with a few private clients recently, so I thought maybe I'll do a video about this because it's a really interesting topic. Now, you may not know, I'm a Jungian life coach, so I've been studying the work of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung for my own personal development, but then to help my clients understand themselves and their vocal habits better so they really can access their true authentic voice. And Jung actually coined these terms, introversion, extroversion, in the early 1920s. And it's still used today. And you probably are aware of the Myers-Briggs personality assessment tool, which is often used in business. And that is based off Jung's work around the personality types. So he published a book in 1923 called The Psychological Types. And actually, Catherine Briggs and Isabel Myers, the creators of this personality test, had already started doing their own research around personality in 1917. And then when Jung's book was finally published in English in 1923, they realized there was a lot more depth to what they had understood. And so what they wanted to do was bring Jung's very complex work to the masses in a way that the average person could maybe make more sense of. So that's why we've ended up with the Myers-Briggs personality assessment tool, but it's very much based on Jung's work, and Myers and Briggs studied Jung's work in a lot of depth. So I just wanted to give that context first of all, because my approach with this is going to be from this sort of Jungian perspective. So let's talk first of all about what Jung meant by introversion and extroversion, and then let's talk about how as a society we've kind of labeled these terms as well. And then we'll look at how this impacts the voice and what I think is a more helpful approach. So first of all, Jung saw introversion, extroversion as more this idea of how we're energized. So introversions are energized by their inner world, by solitude, by stillness, by being quiet. And extroverts are energized by being around people, having lots of company, and a lot of social stimulation. So for Jung, it's more about energy. It's more about how am I energized? Now, in our modern world, I do feel that there is, maybe it's unconscious, maybe it's implied, but if you're an introvert, there's something kind of wrong with you, and extroverts, this is where you need to be. So often introverts are perceived to be shy, they're lacking in confidence, they're not very sociable, they're quiet, they're overly sensitive, very reflective. And even, as one of my clients said to me last week, that she worries that she's perceived as being boring. So in a sense, there's a real negativity, consciously or unconsciously, attached to being an introvert. Now, I do think that is changing to some extent because there are people talking about this more, but still there is this kind of negative undertone to it. On the other hand, if you're an extrovert, then you're sociable, you're fun, you have loads of friends, you're the life and soul of the party, you are maybe a bit of an attention seeker, you're sociable, you're confident, and maybe a bit impulsive. And also very comfortable being assertive as well. So again, I think often in our modern world, we kind of make one bad or wrong and one better. And so I think there is often a lot of shame for introverts. Certainly a lot of the clients that I work with are probably more on the introversion end. Not always, but a lot of them are, which is also makes sense why they struggle perhaps with their voice. But really, we want to start to see them as neutral. They're neither good nor bad. There's nothing bad or good about being an extrovert. There's nothing bad or good about being an introvert. Now, from Jung's perspective, and this is the approach that I take in my coaching, is actually no one is 100% an introvert or an extrovert. We're all actually both. And it's just more what we've learned allows us to kind of fit in society more. It's more what we learned growing up, This is socially adaptive. When I'm more of an introvert and I'm quiet and I just get on with things and I sit in the corner and I read, then I don't make waves, I don't upset people, I can kind of keep the peace in the family. Versus maybe the other side of the coin, you grew up in a big family, there's lots of big voices, and you had to step into more of that extroversion, loud, attention-seeking role to get noticed. So a lot of this is really about our early conditioning, and what we learned was going to keep us safe. So I do agree also that some of this is just to some extent how we are innately and how we've been brought into the world. But I do also think a big part of this is how we're conditioned. So if we're taking Jung's idea that we're really both, and maybe we favor one more than the other because of the way we've been socialized, because of the way we've been rewarded or not rewarded, depending on whether we were loud or quiet, it really depends on your upbringing. For me personally, growing up, I was very much more on the introversion end. I was quite happy being by myself and playing by myself and reading books and doing things by myself. But then as I've got older and I've realized that, we try, and as human beings, we always want to put everything in boxes. We always want to put labels on everything. And so this is where I think the issue lies. And the ego does this. This is the ego's way of feeling safe. So I need to know, what box do you fit in? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you loud? Are you quiet? Are you shy or are you outgoing? Like, we all have these labels that we really want to attach to our personality, which again is really about how your ego learned to survive in the world and keep you safe. So for me, as I started to do more of this work, I realized I was very much both. And I had this conversation with a client last week, and I'm very comfortable being by myself and being in silence. And I like that, but I also like being around people, and I can be very sociable and very loud if I want to be, but it really becomes a choice for me. And yes, I probably favor more of the introversion side. I probably favor having a bit more time to myself, but certainly I can be the life and soul of the party as well. I stand on stage and sing, for goodness sake. So I'm very comfortable being in the limelight and having attention in that sense. So I think it's very, very helpful to start to see yourself as both. Because actually, if you just very overly identify with one, you are going to find limitations with your voice, what you allow yourself to step into, what you allow yourself to create. And this is what I see, and this is why I don't think is very helpful, because we get so overly identified with labels. And this is why I don't necessarily agree with personality tests, because actually, from a Jungian perspective, we're all everything. It's just some parts of our personality we've made wrong or haven't been socially adaptive, so they've been pushed into our shadow, but they're still a part of us, So we can all be extrovert, we can all be introvert. But when we make it wrong or we reject it, then it's got real power in our life. It's driving our life, it's driving our voice. And then we wonder why we struggle with our voice. So let's look at how this might show up in the voice. And of course, I'm generalizing because no one is 100% one or the other, but just go with me to get this idea and see which one you kind of relate to more. So often with an introvert, someone that heavily identifies with being an introvert, they will have a fear of confrontation, fear of making waves, fear of putting boundaries down, fear of upsetting people, fear of taking up too much space, fear of being heard, fear of being too loud, fear of having too much attention. Now, hopefully you can see straight away how that's going to limit your voice. Usually those types of people that come and work with me, their voice is just lacking in power and energy. They really struggle to get their voice out. Perhaps they mumble, it's very low. There's usually a lack of clarity in the voice, and they really struggle to allow the full power of their voice out. And then they wonder why in meetings people talk over them or they ignore them, etc., because they're not really owning their own power, and that's being reflected in their voice. So you can see straight away how that would limit you. Now, the extrovert, on the other hand, is comfortable taking up space, being the life and soul, having all the attention on them, and having lots of people listening to them and laughing at their jokes and all of that. And that's great. But what they struggle with is that closeness, is that intimacy and that vulnerability. So they find it very hard having maybe a lot of one-on-one time with people, because now I'm really seen. Now you're really going to get to know me and see who I really am. Whereas when I'm playing this kind of extrovert role, I'm kind of the life and soul. So often I see with people that I would say fall into that extroversion who really identify with being an extrovert, they really struggle with accessing more of that emotion and that vulnerability in their voice. And again, we need both. We don't just want to be loud and the life and soul. We need to be able to access all colors, all the different potentials in our voice. And what I say to my clients all the time is this is ultimately about a choice. You're not pushing one away because you've made it wrong. So as an extrovert, you've made introversion wrong. As an introvert, you made extroversion wrong. You fully embrace both. And it's a choice because some situations are going to demand, particularly in a professional setting, and this is who my videos are really aimed at, you are going to have to at times step into that role of commanding a room, of having all the eyes on you, of really owning it and being in your power. Just as on the extroverted side, there's going to be times when you need to be able to spend time one-on-one with someone, have those real heartfelt, deep emotional conversations. Like we need both. We can't just live on one side or the other. But when we make it wrong, consciously or unconsciously, we reject it. We suppress it, we resist it, and then we wonder why we struggle to access those parts of our voice, why we struggle to allow our voice out in these ways. So really start to see it's a choice. And you want to bring a spoonful of whatever it is that you perceive that you have rejected. So if you're an introvert, I'm going to bring a spoonful of extroversion into my life and allow myself to just take up a bit more space, to allow my voice out, to allow myself to be heard. And if you identify more with being an extrovert, have a spoonful of introversion. Sometimes just sit back and let other people speak, or really engage with people and let them speak to you and have much deeper, more meaningful, vulnerable conversations one-on-one with people. And then notice emotionally what comes up for you, like, because it's probably going to feel uncomfortable because you're not used to it. You've lived in one side or the other for a reason, to keep you safe. It's what is comfortable for you emotionally. But really, all of Jung's work is about integration. This isn't about making anything wrong. We are integrating it to become a whole person. And this is where your authentic voice lives. Your authentic voice isn't denying the introversion in you or denying the extroversion in you. It's about being a choice so that when you are in a situation, you can like, yeah, I'm going to bring a little bit more energy tonight because this is what this situation calls for. As I say, so for me, if I'm on stage and I'm singing, as my coach was used to say to me, it's like Anushka Plus on stage. Like there's a slightly more elevated version of me, but it's still me. I'm not being someone else. And just like if I'm at a party or something, there'll be a slightly elevated version of me. But again, it's still me. And then equally, I'm very happy having one-on-one conversations. I'm very comfortable being by myself. And so I feel like I can kind of move between both. I see the benefits to both. And so then I can, it's very much a choice in my life now, but it didn't used to be. And I used to make my introversion tendencies very bad and wrong. And so I think that's what I want you to just start to own whatever it is that you have identified with, not make it wrong, but also recognize it's not actually who you are. It's partly a way that you've helped yourself to survive. And actually, you need to integrate both sides. And as I said, as Jung said, we're both. No one is 100% one or the other. The last thing I just want to say is these sort of stereotypes that are often attached to an introvert is shy and lacking in confidence, and an extrovert is really confident and doesn't have any kind of social anxiety and social issues. I don't actually agree with that. I think it's more to do with the energy. It's more to do with how comfortable are you in your own skin. And part of that, or a big part of that, is how much shadow work have you done? How integrated are you? Because you can be very quiet, you can be sitting back, but you can be completely in your power, very comfortable in that silence and allowing other people to speak and just listening, not from a place of I fear speaking, but from a place of I'm just very comfortable being silent right now. Equally, you could be on the other side of the fence and be an extrovert who's loud and is confident, but it's really coming from a place of insecurity. And actually, I don't feel enough. So that's why I feel like I've got to be the life and soul of the party all the time. So check in with your energy, because everything starts from within. How you really feel about yourself is the most important thing. Then you're going to find it far easier to access more introversion or extroversion versus using them as personality traits to avoid parts of yourself. As I say, the extrovert, not always, but if you're not a very conscious extrovert, it might be being used as a way to avoid the insecurity that you feel. The introvert as well, I actually feel very shy around people, but really it's really more about that fear of owning your voice, owning your boundaries, owning who you really are. So it's easier to be shy and not say anything than risk upsetting people. So there's a lot of complexity to this, but just start to notice in yourself, like, where do I feel like I fall, and where can I bring a little bit of the other? Where can I be a bit more conscious about bringing a little bit of the other into how I interact, how I show up, and drop the judgment of whatever you have made it mean. Just see them as neutral. We are both. To a greater or lesser extent, we're all introverts and we're all extroverts. We've all got both within us, just as we've all got male and female energies within us. We're all both. So really start to get that. And then you can show up in a far more empowered way versus holding on to this identity of this is who I am and this is how it's got to be. Because that is ego, and that is very, very limiting in how you live your life and how your voice is going to be expressed. So if you're interested to learn more about my unique coaching approach, using Jungian psychology alongside the technical functional voice training side, then look at the links below. You can book a 30-minute voice consult with me, or if you just want to have a direct experience of my coaching, you can book a 60-minute Reclaim Your Voice session. In both cases, all fees are credited if you continue with me on the full coaching program. But either way, whether you continue with me or not, you will just get so much insight and value from the calls. But just to note that the consult is really more insight and about talking about what your goals are and where you want to go. The coaching session is very much a practical session. So if you want some actionable tips and techniques to implement into your voice, book the coaching session. We'll also be looking at the emotional piece as well. But if you want just a little bit of high-level insight into your voice, book the strategy session, which is really designed for people that are interested in the coaching. But you can book it if you just want some insight as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to know how you found this video in the comments, and I'll see you on next week's video.